YouTube, what is up? Thanks for joining us. We are going live, youtube.com/attacking third, immediately following the United States women's national team match against Costa Rica, the send-off match before the Paris Olympics. Darian's here, I'm here, and if you're here, hey, thanks. Join the combo in the chat. We've got people dropping their thoughts and comments, and we want to hear from you too. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube page so you don't miss any single time that we go live, which will be after every single US Olympics match. So hit subscribe, like this video, and let's rock and roll. Hey everyone, welcome into Attacking Third for a special United States women's national team Costa Rica recap match. Alongside Darian Jenkins, I'm Lisa Carlin. We are going live on YouTube immediately following this match. So it's Tuesday night. We're almost hitting the 10 o'clock hour, Darian. But we just watched a 0-0 draw between US and Costa Rica. What are your initial thoughts of that match?
First of all, I'm not worried. I know people are worried. It can be scary. No goals. We're used to seeing the U.S. completely dominate leading up to major tournaments. But think about the runway time previous teams have had together under, well, we haven't really seen a new system in 2 decades. So under a new system, a new coach, new players coming in, trying to find their groove, trying to find and build relationships that are most effective on the field. I think I'm most proud of seeing we saw a little bit better from the previous game. The situations, the rotation started earlier. They looked dangerous. It's just a matter of putting them away. And I think it's going to happen. This was maybe just the final game where we didn't see it finally all click together.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that your first words on this episode were a disclaimer that you're not worried. It's okay.
I just want everyone to know.
I just want everyone to know. Well, I appreciate hearing from you because I'm a little worried. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, no,
that the U.S. did not convert a single one of their shots and chances that they had, Darian, because 26 shots for the United States and 16 corners, and they couldn't get a goal, and you're telling me you're not at all worried?
Costa Rica was in a low block. We have to give credit to Costa Rica. They defended life and limb. They hardly got into their attacking half in the entire match. They really sat in a very organized low block. We have to give them credit. It's hard to break down. I don't think most teams are going to start an entire game like that. Costa Rica literally sat that way the whole time. It's really difficult to break down. I thought the rotations were good. The ball movement was so much quicker. Now Swanson floating into that 10-9 position was key. It was a good build on what we wanted to see more of last game, what we talked about on the show on Monday. It just needs to come to the finishing. It's going to happen. It's going to open up against teams that are better than Costa Rica because they're going to want to take risks going forward. This was a big win for Costa Rica, in my opinion.
A huge win. You said it right. 0-0 between USA and Costa Rica. We dove a little deep right into the analytics to start this because I needed to know your thoughts. But let's rewind. Talk about the starting 11 for the United States when it initially dropped. Only one change for Emma Hayes from the match on the weekend against Mexico, but ultimately there was a last-minute scratch to midfielder Rose Lavelle. It was just some leg tightness. They talked about it on the broadcast being totally precautionary, nothing major. They just didn't want to injure a player like Rose. So there was ultimately 2 changes for the United States against Mexico. In the back, Alyssa Nair, Naomi Girma, Emily Fox, Tierna Davidson, Crystal Dunn, Sam Coffey in the midfield, and Lindsay Horan, as well as Corbin Albert. That was the addition for Rose Lavelle, or the substitute at the late-minute scratch. And up top, Mallory Swanson, Sophia Smith, and Trinity Rodman, the 3 players that have now had their 3rd start together in the front line. They also made a note, U.S. Soccer, that Dunn Nighswonger was a bit on a precautionary injury, and that's why she was not available off the bench for the United States during this match. But this lineup, when it changed, and really the drop of Rose Lavelle, Darian, I want to ask you about that, and then the substitute of bringing Corbin Albert in. An interesting one, perhaps, because they're not like-for-like swaps. Corbin Albert typically plays much lower on the pitch as a 6 and more defensive in the midfield, whereas Rose is much more of an attacking-minded player. What do you think Emma Hayes was going for with that swap?
I won't lie, I was a little surprised Shaw didn't get the start with Rose being out. We talked about how we love her at the 10 position. Think that with Williams now being one of the forwards, she's going to be more of a midfielder where she thrives. She gets a lot of touches. She has great vision. Her ball playing ability is great. She went with Albert, moved Horan up higher. I think to maybe give Albert those minutes to gel with Coffee and Haran, because those are the two staples in the midfield. I think that's been very clear. Shaw has maybe had more of that opportunity to develop that relationship between them. I thought Haran and Shaw, when Shaw finally did come on, it was there. It didn't. It's fun that needs to be worked on more, but I think they have that chemistry innately. Albert, I'm not so sure because she was playing higher. She wasn't the sixth position we're used to seeing her in. And I actually thought she did well. She was in good scoring opportunities. Yes, she's not the creative ball playing player that we see with Lavelle, but she did a good job. She almost scored a couple of times, but it was an interesting changeup. What were your thoughts on it?
It definitely surprising considering you expected Costa Rica to be sitting back in a lower block. So you would instinctively want more creative players up higher. And maybe that would mean dropping, if not bringing Jaden Shaw in, right? There could be a number of reasons why she didn't want to start Shaw, but dropping Swanson deeper and starting another player up top. Or there are a lot of different moves that Hayes could have done. I think the chemistry shout is a really good one between Coffee, Haran, and Albert. They just need a little bit more time together because they haven't.
Yeah.
They really haven't played much at all together. But the name of the game is going to be if you're ready and stepping up and responding to the moment that is being asked of you. And Albert responded to playing higher up the pitch throughout this game, despite it not being her traditional position, despite it not being probably where she was told she's going to play when she made this roster or where she expects to play, which is much deeper in the midfield. The one other change that Emma Hayes had was at the left-ish back position. It could be a left wing back, a midfielder, but a left back.
Spiritual left.
Spiritual left back. Jenna Nighswonger has started in that left back role consistently, I'm going to say, for Emma Hayes. But Crystal Dunn has subbed in on that left back role, and then Dunn got the start. What do you make of the dynamics between Dunn and Nighswonger both fighting for that left back position?
I think it's a little bit tighter of a competition than we're giving it credit for, especially with, like I said, Williams now being one of the staple forwards. She's going to play on the front line. She's not playing anywhere else. I thought Dunn did great. She was calm on the ball. She moved the ball really quickly. She rotated into the midfield. It looked a little bit more seamless, maybe. And I think that's because maybe her and Haran have had a lot of time to play together, as well as her and Swanson. I think there was just maybe more chemistry than we saw in the last match in particular.
Even her and Tierna Davidson. It played together a lot there.
It looked smooth. It looked clean. The ball moved a lot quicker. Maybe it's not as, the same balls that we see Nighswonger, which not many players can whip into the box and that same level of precision that she can. But I think in the buildup, it looked good. There was never any worry. And I think defensively, Crystal just offers so much solidity in that left back space where all teams are looking to capitalize against the US because that left back position does go so high, the spiritual left back. But I was here for it. I mean, I'm a Crystal stan. I think she's fantastic wherever she plays. But what are your thoughts on the spiritual left back?
I think it's Jenna Nighswonger's spot. I do. I don't think that we will see Crystal Dunn start there unless it's like due to a precautionary or due to injury or minute management. But I believe that the starting lineup that Emma Hayes rolled out with against Mexico with Jenna Nighswonger in that left back and Rose Lavelle in the midfield is the front line, or is the starting 11 that she is going to be her preferred A team heading into the Olympics. Who knows, though? I think the performance from Crystal Dunn tonight proved that she is ready and she can step into that role and be a difference maker and be a game changer. I don't think they found Dunn as effectively in the first 15, 20 minutes of this match as they did with Jenna Nighswonger in the last match. And maybe that's just with time and playing with Jenna Nighswonger. They know where she's going to be. But as soon as Dunn did start to get on the ball, it was smooth like butter. The ball movement was really good. And I mean, Crystal Dunn is just so technically skilled and sound. She is just a consistent player. You know what she's going to do. You know that her first touch is going to be perfect. And you know that she's going to roll with this. The United States throughout this first half, let's just look at the first half in general. They had some opening chances and shots on target. They were creating chances. Emma Hayes was heard saying that Trinity on the right flank was creating a lot of space. She was wide open and she wanted Rodman on the right side to get a lot of the ball. And there were chances. What differences did you see in the way that United States attacked against Costa Rica than they did against Mexico just a few days ago?
I think they allowed their wingers to go 1v1, well, particularly Rodman, the poor girl. Justice for Trinity Rodman. She can't do 2 touches on the ball without getting ripped or fouled or having to just fight tooth and nail to get some space from somebody because they want to close her down so quickly. I think Chinchilla, that was a really good matchup between the two of them. But in the first half, it was
Chinchilla a little bit for. I mean, Rodman got crosses off, but she drew a lot of corners.
It was a handful. It was a handful. But I think it's a really good test for Rodman because if you're an opponent looking at this going to the Olympics, you're thinking we cannot let this girl start to cook because she is the ultimate game changer. Once she starts to get confident on the ball, she starts to get end line. Everyone's crashing the box. It's only a matter of time before it really starts to come to fruition on the goal side. But I think she was absolutely fantastic, but they had to make the adjustment in the second half because start doubling down on Rodman. But that was a fun matchup. And I think it's good for her to get this test early because if I'm looking at, oh my God, I have to go against if I'm a defender or a winger, I have to track Trinity Rodman. I want to get in her head. Oh, if that's what's throwing her game off, I'm going to foul her. I'm going to clip her. I'm going to do, the dirty part of the game and try to really mess with her and her confidence going forward. And it took her out of the game, I think, for a little bit. She stopped getting the ball so much. Right. US went elsewhere. What do you disagree?
I agree with you. I'm just going to say that this is a good test for Rodman, a really good test for her.
Has to keep her head.
A young player, of course, keeping her head, which she's done that. She has gotten so much better at that than her first professional season in the NWSL. It was even with the national team, it was she's going to get at least a couple yellow cards.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I'm not necessarily worried about that. She also has to know that scouting reports are going to have her circled in the fact that she stays wide. She wants the ball at her feet and she wants to go at 1v1 defenders. So in knowing that defenders are going to do that against her, she has to be able to constantly switch up and throw them off her scent, whether it's going end line, cutting inside, combining with a little give and go. And I think she did a really good job of that against Costa Rica.
In the second half, I thought she was fantastic with her movement, adjusting.
Yes, the variety in which she chose to act on the ball and get past the defender was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And that was growth. I think that has to do a little bit with having the break at halftime and conversations and regrouping and also talking to some teammates and saying hey, I need your support when I'm isolated on the wide areas, because we saw so many more give and goes, so many wall passes, 1-2 touches between her and Swanson in the midfield, or Haran who popped over there, Albert, to get in behind the defense. And Swanson, she was deep in that pocket. She's got the freedom. Do you think Emma Hayes is just saying, Mallory Swanson, you can find your pocket anywhere on the pitch and go for it?
I think especially with Rose not in, it gives her a lot more freedom to do so. Something we were critical of last game is that when the forwards were very much in their positions during the match, it wasn't effective. It was very isolating. It was reminiscent of US last year. Right. And once, I think from halftime, very stagnant. From halftime, looking at Swanson's positioning, obviously they went to the 3-5-2, which I know we're going to talk about. But her floating around a little bit more asked so many more questions of the Costa Rican back line and midfield because they couldn't get close enough. When you're defending, you're already a step late. You're already late to every single thing. And then when you're moving the ball quickly, it's 1-2 touch, it's wall passes, like you said, it's little bounce passes that are just giving small movements, and everyone's taking steps laterally, as opposed to the US, everyone's typically bombing forward. Everyone's looking to face forward. Back is to your teammates. Everybody was open, wanting the ball to move it quick. I think that's where we saw them finally pulling Costa Rica out a little bit of that low block and then allowing deeper runs from Haran, from Swanson, from Albert to get into the 18 to get some shots off. I think they looked much more dangerous when Swanson has that freedom to do so.
Yeah, I mean, when Swanson has the freedom, she's so good at recognizing the space and where she can be most effective on the pitch. With that flexibility of her movement, she can float wide, she tracks back, she finds pockets, she's central, she checks, she stretches, she overloads, she isolates, she does it all.
Yeah.
And it's at the perfect timing. I think the role of Swanson in this iteration under Emma Hayes is going to be very different than at national teams past. I think she's going to take on more of that creator, assister role than goal scoring role. At times, she is just looks like she wants to set her teammates up for success instead of taking it herself, which was asked of her previously under different national teams in different iterations. And heck, when she was 16 and made her first cap and first got on this team, it's just a different look of Swanson, and it suits her very well. And it suits this team. There, throughout the first 45 minutes, by the end of the first half, things really started to open up for the United States. They were creating more chances, but more dangerous chances and more frequent chances. And a lot of it had to do with Haran making those deep runs out of the midfield. What initiates that type of sequence of play from the United States?
It's what we were just talking about, the quick ball movement, Swanson being able to float around, Trinity making these underlapping runs, not sticking so much to the sideline where she was just getting clobbered left and right. And it confused the Costa Rican defense so much that you could see Haran, like, just watch, if we can go back, I wish I was on the show Thursday to do a little tactical breakdown, but watch the movements of Swanson, of Smith, where everyone's looking at each other and kind of moving laterally. It clears these giant lanes for Albert, for Haran to run through. And bless Girma and Davidson are peeping this and playing these little dink balls over the top, these really decisive through balls where Haran was able to get these opportunities on goal to score. Didn't ultimately come to a goal, as we know, but it looked really good. They were doing it. They were taking exactly what Costa Rica was giving them in this low block. And it's just another tool in their arsenal, in my opinion.
Sam Coffey, also another player that was finding space to dink the ball over to. A couple chippers that Haran almost got on the end of at the end of that
her ball passing was so decisive tonight too. It wasn't just lateral. I think she was one of the players I wrote down that, in my opinion, has really taken on Hayes's tactics that she's talked about of moving the ball quickly. Don't waste time on the ball. No unnecessary touches. And her decisive passes, I think, broke the field up so much for those combination plays to take place.
Yeah, it was very impressive to watch Coffey and Haran and their movement. The U.S., they looked good. They looked good despite not being able to find the back of the net. Throughout that first half, they had 10 shots, 6 of them on target, and 6 corners, a lot of them coming from Trinity Rodman, just cooking on the right side, but not able to get enough crosses into the box. All right, that's the first 45 minutes. Darian, you predicted a formation change from Emma Hayes for this U.S. side. I'm giving you your flowers. You deserve it, but not yet. First, we're going to take a quick break. Then you get your flowers.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back to Attacking Third. The United States draw with Costa Rica 0-0 in their final send-off match before the Paris Olympics. Alongside Darian Jenkins, I'm Lisa Carlin. Darian's not worried, though. She's not all worried that the U.S. didn't score any goals despite all of the chances they created, which bodes well for us because that means that Darian is on the right path of thinking. And I think we should all just trust her because earlier in the week, yesterday it was, I don't even know what day it is, Darian, you said that you would like to see a 3-5-2. Yep, I know. Move the fro so you can hear me. You were right. You were right. Second half rolls out, and Emma Hayes makes 0 changes with her subs, but it's the formation change. She rolls with a 3-5-2. How'd you know that was going to happen?
Well, we've always joked, shout out to Courtney Stith, the spiritual 3-5-2 that they already play in. It's not as forward as we just saw it happen in the second half, but when you play it, honestly, it's a sign of respect when teams go into such a low block against you and there was commentary that Hayes was shocked that Costa Rica came out that low. You have the space to send so many numbers forward. Why not? If you're not worried about the threats, or you're so confident in your back line and you know what, if there is a threat, we can handle this. We'll be able to recover and overshift and lock them to one side to allow more support to come. Why not do it? Especially when you have such talented wingers and wingbacks that can get up and down the pitch, that you're moving the ball really well, which we saw at the end of the first half they were doing, to then just send crosses into the box, get those rebounds, be dangerous, help with combination play to pull Costa Rica out. I think it was really effective. I still think they looked good. Swanson getting on the ball a little bit more. She dictates everything. I think it's exactly what you said, where she's the facilitator a little bit more because she sees the game, I think, differently than anybody else on the pitch does. Maybe Haran and Rose Lavelle are two other players. But it was effective. It was a good look. It's another tool in their arsenal when a team goes into a low block and they're just going to bomb everybody forward. I like it. It's also a really fun formation to play when you keep the ball.
Yeah, when you're not a wing back too.
Yep.
I was a wing back. It's just a lot of running. But when you're keeping the ball, and I think we saw with Hayes switching to a 3-5-2, it is situational. It is going to be situational in big tournaments against opposition that is sitting so deep. Emma Hayes also said that she wasn't expecting Costa Rica to be in such a deep low block. She was maybe expecting it to be a bit higher, more of a mid block, and it was so low. Because of that, it forced a shift in the United States play, which we haven't said that in years, that something in game forces a shift that we actually saw be executed in the second half. The team adjusted on the fly. They had 15 minutes in the locker room to talk about situational moments and what was going to happen with Swanson dropping deeper and Smith and Rodman and who was going to go wide and what was going to happen. And it continued to create goals and chances for the United States, a flurry of them. One of them finding the back of the net, but ultimately in the 55th minute being disallowed. But the sequence to build up to that U.S. Disallowed goal in the 55th minute was so beautiful. There was fluid movement. They were interchanging. They knew where the pass was going before they even received it. They knew their options and played it. And Costa Rica was caught ball watching and just turning their heads and trying to get around them. And it was really impressive to see the U.S. break down a block all within the 18 with short passes and quick movement, but ultimately it is disallowed due to the offsides. But when you're playing and you get, that was their second disallowed goal of the match, but you feel that things are working, how does that change your perspective on the pitch?
It means things are going right. We're doing the right thing. It's just one thing was a little bit off. Credit to Costa Rica again for having that be offside because they looked like cones in that play, but it was beautiful from the U.S. I think it's a good confidence booster. The commentators were saying Lindsey Horan's body language after was calm, which is a great sign, which I loved. Being an example, you're not stressed that you didn't score. It wasn't the end of the world that you didn't put that away, because that body language, everybody feeds off of it, especially when you're the captain. So I like it. It's a good sign. Things are going in the right direction. It's just that one piece is missing. We're saying that a lot tonight. I know.
It's when the crosses came for the United States and the corners. Okay, ultimately throughout this match, the United States picked up 16 corner kicks that they could not convert on. We will give a huge shout out to Costa Rica's goalkeeper, Noelia Bermudez. Insane game, 12 saves throughout this match. She stood on her head to keep this a shutout. And you said it at the top of this episode, this is a win for Costa Rica. They just shut out the United States. But the crossing and the corner kicks for the United States didn't look as precise as they could have been. What does that due to? Is it the crosser not being able to pick out someone in the box? Is it the congestion in the box, considering all 11 Costa Ricans were in there defending? What is the problem solving in that sense if you're Emma Hayes and you see 16 corners and we didn't convert?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of congestion. That's a lot of traffic, a lot of bodies to try to get through. And even when you do have set pieces and corners that you've workshopped in training that you're going to try to pull them out, if no one's biting and it's not working, it's nearly impossible. Even your own teammates get in the way, which we actually saw quite a few times, people taking shots. your own teammate getting in the way, blocking it themselves with no intention of doing so. It's just so many people in there trying to make up numbers, trying to be effective. I don't know if every other team they play, especially in the Olympics, will respect the U.S. like that, because they do have better defensive principles and players and just a better developed team, I think, to be more of an opponent to the U.S. But it's a good thing. You have a lot of film now to go back and look on where runs were going, who's shielding who's getting in the way of who. Do you pull people out so that it draws some of Costa Rica out? I think that's maybe an adjustment that could have been done. But it's an opportunity to learn a lot with 16 corners. That is something I think they'll look back on and be like, this is something we could have fixed by simply pulling some people out, drawing Costa Rica out a little bit, whipping maybe a corner in or a cross in off of a pass off of the initial corner. I think that's when they looked a little bit more dangerous on those.
Changing the angle of the cross.
Yeah, asking a little bit more questions instead of something so direct, because it was so congested, in my opinion.
It's hard to score and do that. And you are right. At the Olympics, which is around the corner, this was the final match for the US. Teams are going to score. They're going to want to score. They're going to have to score. They're going to have to score. In Costa Rica, they didn't need to do that. They could sit back and just defend with their entire lives, which is exactly what they did for 90 minutes. And they did a great job at it because the US did not score. Costa Rica picked that up for them. But when you look at Costa Rica and Mexico, who the US two played, CONCACAF rivals, there's been some conversation about how challenging are these opponents? What are they testing the US with? What did the US get tested with between Mexico and Costa Rica? Why did Emma Hayes and US Soccer pick these opponents?
I mean, Mexico, it's the classic clash of US Mexico. How do you not have that match, especially because Mexico tested the US so much at the W Gold Cup and killed the US in transitions. They weren't afraid to come out and attack, and I think that's a great opponent to play. Costa Rica offers something different, a complete low block, which maybe we'll see teams give the US a glimpse of that in the Olympics when, they're worried about the attack of the US. They're trying to draw them out. So I think you've got a bit of both in those opponents of what we'll see in the future. And it asks different questions of the US tactically and how they're going to break a team down, which I like. But I truly would have liked a more difficult opponent where they don't respect the US so much, where they're actually going to come out and try to attack. I think Mexico had glimpses of it, but they don't have the full team to really do it justice quite yet, at least not consistently.
Yeah.
It's all through Ovalle, truthfully. But I think it asks different questions. I wish it was more of a test, though, because even if, we saw this tie, if it were a different opponent where US really had to defend, where they were challenged defensively, they were exposed over that left back side, I would feel a little bit more confident going to the Olympics because it's like, oh, okay, now we know how to cover this. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, like they were tested, but just in ways that I don't know, maybe aren't as effective heading into a huge international
ways we've seen already too.
Right.
It's like anything new.
Yeah, but they still didn't score.
Yeah.
Which means that, okay, I guess it was a good test because there's film to look at and there are things to improve upon, right? If the score was 6-0, we would say, hey, we wish there was an opponent that really tested the US defensively. But the fact that this was still a test means that these were good opponents to me. Mexico tested the United States in their physicality and their mentality heading into that match. And there were moments where the US had to defend, and they only won by a score of 1-0 against Mexico. Costa Rica tested them in their low block. How can the US break that down and get through that? And they did at moments, but not scoring ultimately. And it just comes down to placement at times too, right? Finding the corners, just picking out those small little moments. Throughout this match, we did see subs ultimately towards the end of this game. 67th minute, Lynn Williams came on, Casey Kruger, Emily Sonnet. We did get Jaden Shaw in this match. At the very end, 89th minute, we got the second cap for our girl, Croy Bethune. She checked in for Swanson in the final minute plus of this match, who is going to the Olympics as an alternate. But when you look at the players that were on the pitch for this match, Darian, including the subs that came in, which is a player that stood out to you, player of the match for you from the United States?
Of the subs or in whole?
Of all of them.
I'll say Swanson. I think she is really the heart of the new iteration of this team. When she's not with them, they look completely different. She's the glue, even with Lavelle in and out. Yes, Lavelle's immediately a game changer. She adds a completely new wrinkle to this team. Swanson's the constant, in my opinion. No matter where she is on the pitch, she links play. She looks dangerous. Yes, she's become more of the facilitator, but I don't know if everyone's up to her level of what she's seeing in the game. She made a couple runs in this match where it could have just been a quick layoff, quick 1-2 where she gets the shot off, as opposed to somebody opting to go 1v1, take a couple touches and shoot themselves.
Yeah, I saw that happen with Smith.
Yes. Yeah, Smith, a couple instances, and Rodman, where I'm like, oh, just give her the ball. She's already there. But yeah, you're a forward, you want to score, I get it. But she's player of the match for me, player of the last 2 games. Player for the US that's really going to bring them success in the Olympics. But what about you? Who's your player you've got your eye on?
Sam Coffey. She played so well in this
shout.
match. She really did. I mean, Swanson is a incredible shout. Her creativity is unmatched, but Coffey is simple and she plays well and she is consistent, and you know that her passes are going to connect and she's going to be available on a ball that pops out when the US is throwing crosses in. And she's so good at her decision making on the ball as well. And that stability to have in front of your center backs is so crucial. And that's why Emma Hayes can play a 3-back against any opposition, I believe, because you have a Sam Coffey sitting in front of that back line that is going to do such a good job at bringing the calmness, controlling the tempo of the game, moving quickly but not playing rushed, having patience but also a sense of urgency in her play. And the balance that Coffey finds when she is on the ball is just, it's beautiful. Like, not to be all poetic, but it's so beautiful. It is.
I think we've seen her grow a lot the last 6 months in her game, where she was, I don't know, especially in the 6th position, you have to bring something different because there's so many players that can defend. And you know what? Keep possession of the ball, can have 98% passing success in a match where you're just kind of going backwards or square. She plays those balls that are threatening still with good pace, and they're decisive, that break play up for the US, and she's very safe at the same time. So I like that shout. That's a great one.
She had 35 passing attempts, 32 passing completions.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's good.
She even had a pass completion on that little dink to Haran, because technically Haran touched it. That's how
she did touch it. Was a good shot. Good opportunity.
Okay, final thoughts from you, Darian. When you think about the United States and under Emma Hayes, who this stat, it blows my mind. Every coach before Emma Hayes has had 16 matches leading up before a major tournament. Emma Hayes only had 4. What is your assessment of the United States women's national team under Emma Hayes as they head off to the Olympics?
She's done amazing with them. I think they're going to do well in the tournament. They still have kinks to work out, but that's just due to her only having 4 games. That is so insane. Imagine if she had that long runway up to being with them for the Olympics. I would say US has it in the bag because of the glimpses of brilliance we've seen, like that disallowed goal in the second half. But it'll be good. I think their first game against Zambia is going to be an amazing test. It's going to, African teams come out and they ball. They want to play. They're not going to be afraid
themselves.
Like they have really great players. It's a shame their federations aren't up to par, but I think it's going to ask really good questions of the US. And from there, I think we're going to see a big leap in how the US does for the rest of the tournament.
I think Zambia first is a good test for them.
Great test. Yeah, great test. But I feel good about it. I'm confident. Like I said, I'm not worried, guys. I'm not worried. We're going to be good. We're going to score some goals. It's going to come together at the right time. But what do you think?
I appreciate you saying that, because the US needs to score. They have to score. They have to be better at scoring goals. I'm not asking for an 8-0 game over Costa Rica. I just wanted one. And the chances that they created are so good. Everything up until the final piece is so good. But they have to get over the finish line. They have to get over that hump. And there were moments of that against Mexico where it was like, you guys have to score a lot of goals against Costa Rica. And they didn't. That hump is still in front of them. I hope that they can shake that off and not allow that to cloud them, especially the forwards, because we talk about it so often. Once a forward gets one goal, the floodgates are open and they just run. That hasn't really happened with these players yet. So training, I'm sure, is going to be a lot of fun, because when you don't score goals, all you do is shoot at practice and you score goals and you work on that. So I'm sure they'll have fun as they head off to the Olympics, but the U.S. has to score. They have to score. A lot of positives to take away from this one, but ultimately they have to find the back of the net.
And they have to stop Banda in this first match. It's going to be tough.
They're going to need some Popeye. They're going to have to be like Popeye, muscle up, get strong, put their sprinting shoes on.
Put your sprinting shoes. Oh my God.
Get ready to rock, because Zambia is going to be a test. I can't believe it. July 25th, the United States plays their first Olympic match. Darian, thanks. This was a ball.
This was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Love these.
Of course. Everyone, if you haven't heard, we've been nominated for a People's Choice Podcast Award. We are nominated for Best Female Hosted Podcast. Thank you, everyone who listens. If you're joining us live on YouTube right now, you can scan the QR code and vote for Attacking Third Best Female Hosted Podcast. The link is also in the YouTube description and the description if you are listening as a podcast. Thanks, everyone, so much for joining us. The United States draw 0-0 with Costa Rica in their final Olympic send-off match. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. You can listen to Attacking Third anywhere you get your podcasts. We're also available as video on youtube.com/Attacking Third, and you can watch us on the Golazo Network. We go live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on YouTube, so we'll see you back here in a little bit. For Darian, Mark, Courtney, I'm Lisa. This was Attacking Third.